Now it's time to figure out the size of your drawer boxes. And again, a little bit of math, so we're back here on the whiteboard. Now, I'm going to give you the measurements from my project, but remember, it's how much you're subtracting. That's what you need to remember. Now, the opening for mine were 6.5 inches tall, and I measured my actual project, not my plan, but the project is 22 1/4 wide. So I have an established opening, and in my case, they're all the same. Now, the drawer height is probably the easiest one. The drawer glides, if you saw in the video, they both have wheels on the drawer and the one that goes inside the cabinet, and they have to go over each other. You stick it in and one falls behind the other, and then it goes in the track. Now, because of that, I can't make the drawer 6.5 inches tall. I can't even make it 6 inches tall. It just won't fit. It won't be able to go up and down again. I have found that subtracting about 1.5 inches gives you plenty of room to go up and over and still have some space up above. So my drawer height, my height, if you will, is going to be 5 inches tall. So I know that all of the strips of wood that I cut to make the box itself are all 5 inches wide when we get in the shop. For now, I'm just calling it height because that's the direction. So 5 inches tall. Okay, great. We've got that established. The depth for all of my drawers, what hardware did you use? Did you use the 14s, the 16s, the 20, or something else? Whatever the depth of that hardware is, just make your drawer that depth. So I used 16s, so my drawer depth is 16. That's also not too bad. That's easy to figure out. It's the width, it's the size of this front piece that gets a little bit tricky. So let's put down what we already have. I have 4 drawer openings. So I'm going to need 8 left sides and right sides, and I'm going to need 8 fronts and backs to make 4 drawers. I know that my height, which will be a width, because all the grain is going this way, that's a width cut. My height is 5. So all those pieces are going to be 5 inches by something. Okay, we've got that established. My depth, my left and right sides, these pieces here, go completely from the front to completely to the back. And we'll put rabbets in those, but I'll get into that in a second. And so whatever my depth of the total box is, that is the depth or the length of that piece. All right, so if this is my left and right sides, that would simply be 16. There is my size for 8 pieces, 5 by 16. Those are my lefts and rights. The front one is the one that gets a little tricky, so let me do another little drawing. Your drawer is put together with rabbet joints. All right, now if I'm looking straight down on top of the drawer, this is the front and this is the side. Okay, and the back is done exactly the same way. This piece from here to here is 1/2 of an inch thick. All of my drawer making parts are 1/2 inch thick. They come pre-cut to that thickness. They're already sprayed and finished, and they're really easy to use. But we want a a rabbet joint in the front to have that in, very similar to our project when we built it way at the start. This is 1/4 of an inch deep right there, that dado, that rabbet, that cut. So if I have a 1/2 inch thick board and I'm making a 1/4 inch deep rabbet, what I have left here is 1/4 of an inch. So I have 1/4 of an inch there, and I'll have another 1/4 of an inch there. I'm looking for the length of this front piece, the distance from here to here, so it fits inside. All right, so that being said, I have a 22 1/4 inch opening. I have to subtract 1/2 inch for those white drawer glides we put in just a little while ago. They're both 1/2 inch thick. So 22 1/4 minus 1/2 will be 21 1/4. 21 1/4, that is the size the box has to be when I'm finished. When I'm done with it, it's got to be 21 1/4. But that's from here to the far outside. I need to subtract that 1/4 inch twice. So now it is 22 1/4 minus 1, 21 1/4 minus a 1/4 would be 21, but I've got to take away another 1/4. 21 minus another 1/4 would be 20 3/4. Okay, so that will be the length of this particular piece. So 20 and 3/4 inches long. Now there is a very simple way that you could figure this out without having to do all the math. I wanted you to see the theory behind it. Now we've got our cut list. But here it is, it's very simple. It is the opening minus 1.5. The opening minus 1.5 will give me the size of that piece that I'm looking for. But to make sure that you understood where I got it from, I went through all the math, subtracted for the hardware and subtracted for the thickness of that rabbet. But with my setup, it is the opening minus 1.5, and you'll get your pieces, the length of those front and back pieces. Now that you got your cut list, take it back into the shop and we'll cut it to size. Now it's time to cut the pieces for the sides of your drawers. But there's a few things you need to make sure to get correct first. First, get the right wood. This is birch plywood. It's 5 feet by 5 feet when you pull it out of the back. You might find a half sheet, whatever, that's fine, but it's 5 by 5, 60 inches square. It is pre-finished. It's got a sprayed, nice shiny finish on it. It's only a 1/2 inch thick. But make sure that you put it on the saw correctly. We do not want to cut our strips across the grain. No company in the world will make drawer boxes with grain going vertical. The grain's always going sideways. So we need to cut our strips with the grain. Then we cut them to length after that, and we're ready to do our rabbet joints and whatever. So here's the math. It's time for a little bit more math. On my project, here are the sizes for my sides of my boxes. Yours will be different, but you got to go through the same math. Now each strip I'm going to cut from there is going to be 5 inches wide. That's what I have here. However, they're 60 inches long, so how many pieces do I need to cut out? Now these are 20 3/4. 20 3/4, I can't quite get 3 pieces per 60-inch strip. I can get really close, but it's still oversized. 16s, however, will be fine. So what that means is I can get 2 of these and 1 of these per strip. So I'll need at least 4 just to get these pieces, and those 4 will give me 4 of those. What's left, I should be able to get it out of 1 and maybe 2 if needed, or I could find the last piece from a piece of scrap. So I know right off the top that I need 5 strips. So come over to the saw, set it to 5, and cut 5 strips that you'll need for your boxes.
Take all of the strips of plywood you cut either to the upcut saw or to the chop saw to cut them to exact length. You don't need to leave an extra inch for plywood. You can also stack them if that helps you go faster, but remember they need to be the same length when you're all finished.
For projects in the advanced class, generally I found that people who are doing drawers have a lot of drawers, and it's a lot of work to go through the normal way of the round table where my setup for making drawers for beginners is. I found that the table saw does a better job anyway. Now, you are welcome to use your normal setup on that round table over there, the 3-section router table that does everything, and it works great. I prefer this. It's a little bit of a better cut in my opinion. It's a little bit more setup because you have to change the blades here and there, but it's up to you. But if you're going to do a lot of drawers and you want them all done fairly quickly and smoothly, this is the way to go. If the dado head is in there and all set, then here's how you set it up. I'll have it already to the proper height. Your job is to move the fence so it's in there right. Take a piece of the material you're going to be using for your sides, and you need to set the blade so that this side of the fence with this on it, this board is just on the outside of this tooth. So as you're setting it up, put this against it and lay that down on top of it and nudge the fence until that tooth edge is right on the edge of this board. Next thing is make a quick test cut just to see if it fits. So I just go in and out, grab one of my pieces and set it right there, and if this is flush, you're good, and that feels pretty good. Now if it's way over or way under, you'll just have to nudge the fence in or out accordingly. But get it so this is perfectly flat. Have a look at the depth. It should be halfway, and this one is. It's already set. Again, if it's too high or too low, let me know and I'll help you adjust it. But it's simply turning the handle in front of your knees until that goes up a little or down. But we're talking about an eighth, a tenth of a turn. I mean, just a little bit at a time to make sure it's right. If this is off, it'll be too tight or too loose. If it's off the other way, it'll have the same problem. Once you're all set, the boards that get these rabbets are the 16 inches, the lefts and the rights. In my case, are the 16s. The left one and the right one on the ends. And you're going to push it across the blade like that. Now, because it likes to turn a lot, simply reach down and grab your miter gauge, and you're going to push it across like that. And we'll do all of them, the left and the right, on all of the 16s. Now, I notice there's a gap, so if you loosen this, you can always turn it so that there's no gap. Hold it down, and I bring it back across. Now that you have your 16s cut with the rabbets, we need to put the groove in the bottom for the bottom to fit in so it doesn't fall out. Now, I've already changed the blade. I took all the center blades out, and now I've got an eighth, and I've got a little shim in between, so it's a 1/4 inch of a groove. Now, my standard is a 1/2 inch from this face to the inside of this tooth. So you simply take your tape measure and put it in there, and about a 1/2 inch. Even if this one is off, it doesn't matter. As long as you cut them all with that same measurement, it's fine. But the depth is correct already. I simply change the blade, move that in, and now I'm ready. Now I need to put this groove on one edge on all of these boards and the long ones, except half of them. Now, why? Well, we're actually going to cut these off. The bottoms are going to be cutting off so that we can slide the bottom in the drawer box later. So just take my word for it. Take half of your long ones that we haven't touched yet and lay them aside. They're fine. We're only going to put a groove on this batch and then run them all through. Now, those remaining 4 pieces that we haven't touched, there's one other thing we need to do. I mentioned we need to cut the bottom off, but how much? Take a tape measure. This is one of the boards that we already put the groove in. This is one of the sides. Simply hook it on that groove that you just did and measure to the top. In my case, it's about just under 4 1/4, about 4 3/16. Yours could be different than mine, but it has to be the distance from the top to the top of that groove. Now, I've already set the table saw to 4 3/16, and now we run them all through.
Take all of your side pieces to the round router table, to the bullnose bit, and run them all through along the top edge. Every one of your pieces needs it. Remember, the groove that the bottom fits in can either face up or down towards the table, and the cut will be correct.
Now we've got to figure out the size for the bottoms of these boxes. So I have my paper ready to put the dimensions on, but they of course go together so that the groove lines up. You want that groove to line up like that. And of course I'll repeat it on the other side with another long one and so forth. But this is the the right side, and this is the front side. Now, how does the bottom fit into this thing? Well, it goes into the groove, but here's the dimensions. The width of the drawer bottom is going to be exactly the same as the front or the back, the front and back pieces. So my left to right dimension is exactly what this is. This is 20 3/4. Now, because I want to make sure that it fits in there, 20 3/4 should be a width. I need to subtract 1/16 of an inch, a 32nd to a 16th of an inch from that. So I'm going to leave it as written as 20 3/4. I just need to know when I go to the table saw, set it, find 20 3/4 and take off a line. That's it. That will make sure that it fits in perfectly, and it gives it a little bit of room to fit in. Now, the depth from the front to back is this way. It is going to be the same length as this, minus a 1/4 of an inch. Minus that 1/4 because when I have this on there, there's a 1/4 of an inch bit of wood in this groove. I only went in a 1/4, so there's a 1/4 of an inch left. So I want it to be flush in the back, but go all the way into that groove. So it is this entire distance minus 1/4 of an inch. In this case, this is 16, so I want 15 3/4. And that is the size of my base. So 20 3/4, I'll usually put a minus sign so I know it's a little less than that, and I need 3 of them that are that size. Go and find some melamine, some masonite, whatever you're using for your base, and cut them on the table saw or the panel saw, and then we'll assemble your drawer box.
When you're gluing your box together, glue together a front piece and a side piece and nail them together with 2 or 3 nails. Be careful not to shoot so low that you shoot into the groove at the base. You can see that my nail is higher up along the bottom edge. Next, glue the other side and nail it in. Then for the back, flip what you have over so it's upside down. This way, the back piece that is shorter is aligned along the top edge. Glue both ends. Align it in place, making sure that the groove your bottom fits in is still clear, and nail it together. Once you're finished, put the white side of the piece of your base downward so that when you open the drawer you see the white. Push it in all the way so that the drawer is square, and tack the back in with just a few nails.
The last step to these before we put them in is to put on these 2 drawer glides. Remember, you need a drawer right and drawer left. It says DR and DL right there. I know it's hard to see on camera, but they're there so you can tell you got a right and a left. Now, here's the back. I have that back edge cut off. Here's the front. You need to position it so that the front, the spot opposite the wheel's in the back, this front part is flush with the front. And then we'll put a screw here and here. Now, a lot of times with this 1/2-inch material, it likes to split. We use exactly the same screws we use for the front hardware, but when I put it in, that one tends to split. I don't know if you heard it, but there's a big crack right there. Don't worry about it. That's normal. It will still work. And then one in the back. Also, try to position your screw so that it's actually on this side of the hole slightly, so it's pulling the hardware in. If I put it close to the outside of the hole, it'll center it on the screw, so it'll move it away and it'll expand this, and it may not fit, so be careful. Now, if these just aren't doing it for you, that's kind of loose, the cracking's too bad, you may put your screws in the side if you wish. That is totally up to you. They're both acceptable. As long as they're in enough so that the head isn't sticking out, it'll slide just fine. Go ahead and put on the other side, and then do the other drawers that you have, and then go see if they fit. Here's our moment of truth to see if the drawer box fits in. So hook it, and it should slide right back. The idea, of course, is that you can push it with a finger, and it goes and drops downhill at the very end. Now, if it doesn't fit, there's of course 2 reasons that it wouldn't fit. It's either too big or too small. If it's too small, right here, this isn't hooking, all we have to do is take out this hardware, pull that off, put a thin piece of wood in there so that the hardware is actually in a little bit. That will take up the rest of that space, and then we'll just reattach it, put it back in, screw it in. That should be plenty to make this work. Okay, and then it'll be, the distance will be fine. We just need to know how big to make the shim. Now, the other reason it doesn't fit is it's too big already. If that's the case, what I do, and this is something that I do on the table saw, we remove the side of the hardware. We actually take this off, and I'm going to raise the table saw blade and cut along the edge and remove about 1/8 of an inch or so. So now when I put it back on, it's actually in another 1/8, and I've gained that amount of space. That space is extra. So I don't like doing that, but we can. It is an easy fix. I can actually do that to both sides and give you as much as 1/4 of an inch. But you need to let me know. So if you put it in and it is tight, I mean, you can't actually put it in, it doesn't glide, we can fix it. If it's way too loose and falls off of this wheel, we can shim it and fix it that way. So just know there are ways to fix minor little problems. Get the rest of your drawers in, and then we'll worry about the drawer fronts after that.